Our team back course talk about some Final Fantasy VII, and we are exactly 1 month away from Crisis Core Reunion dropping. Something I didn't know if it was ever going to happen, right? Like, we've been wanting that port or remaster or anything for Crisis Core for so long. It's crazy that it's almost here. So for today, I did want to do a Crisis Core video. So they put out a blog post a couple days ago on the PlayStation website titled More Than Remasters, where they talked to the devs for both Crisis Core Reunion and Tactics Ogre Reborn. Obviously, we're kind of here just for the Crisis Core stuff. That being said, though, I have played the original Tactics Ogre, the actual PlayStation 1 version, and I wasn't sure what this newer Tactics Ogre was, but it's actually like a remake/remaster, similar to Crisis Core Reunion, of the 2010 remake of the original Tactics Ogre that was on PSP. So it's another PSP game that they're modernizing, which is pretty cool. In terms of the devs that are part of this interview, it's Katase and then Mariko Sato, or Sato, I'm not sure how you say their name. Both of them are producers for Reunion. Sato was not a part of the original Crisis Core, but of course Katase was, so it's kind of interesting to get their different perspectives. So first up, they say, Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII, and Tactics Ogre Let Us Clean Together are two of the most acclaimed games released on the PSP. There's a lot of anticipation about them coming back, especially in new and improved form, but why do it now? To which Katase says, if a game's original hardware is no longer manufactured, it can be difficult to play the title. Crisis Core is an example of that. Of course, it would be possible to use cloud technology to play the game at its original specs, but the truth is that after Final Fantasy VII Remake, fans have higher expectations towards the graphics. So I think that it's definitely worthwhile remastering the game for current generation platforms in order to meet these expectations. So everything he said there is true and makes sense, right? They stopped making the PSP quite a while ago, something like 2014 or so. They still produced UMDs for a while after that. And obviously, before the reveal of Reunion, you'd have to go out and buy an actual PSP, which is usually $200+ from what I've seen in used game stores and stuff like that and online, if not more than that. And obviously a physical copy of Crisis Core itself, or there's the route of emulating, which obviously there's some legality issues there, but they sort of leave the community no choice, right? It's essentially abandoned, where up until the reveal of Crisis Core Reunion, obviously, Crisis Core is 15 years old and they've done nothing with it this entire time. There's no other option except for emulation or spending $200 to $300 just to fucking play the game, which is kind of ridiculous. So it's kind of their fault people would be emulating. And it kind of sucks that it took them this long to finally do something with Crisis Core, but it's probably for the best, right? Because we could have got a port or remaster some years ago, maybe PS3 or something, or even PS4. But the fact that I waited this long to have the best possible technology, so to speak, to do a remake/remaster, it's great, dude. Because it's the best this game's ever looked. And as Katase talked about, they could have just ported it with the original specs, right? But the thing is, Crisis Core is a great game, and the cinematics are fucking insane for a handheld. But if you walk around the world, the assets of that game are pretty bad. They're pretty fuzzy. There's literally signs you can't read in the game and shit. So it makes sense to modernize the game. Now, the majority of us would have been okay with him just porting the PSP version. We just wanted to play Crisis Core on modern consoles, right? We've been wanting that for so long. But it's good that they wanted to actually improve it, make it a better product, and put it more in line with Remake, of course. Of course, it's also a reunion for many of you who worked on those original games. You must have some fond memories of that time. Katase says, I was executive director on the original Crisis Core, but we didn't have enough game designers back then, so I also joined the creative teams on the ground partway through the development period. I was in charge of several sections that came from the original Final Fantasy VII, such as the level design for Inside the Shinra Mansion and the staging for the confrontation between Cloud and Sephiroth in the Nibelheim reactor. There's a lot of nostalgia working on those. And that had to be pretty cool, right? Because he was only a director initially for Crisis Core, but because of the lack of dev team, he had to actually step into a creative role. And it's probably pretty cool to work on locations from the original Final Fantasy VII and get to more modernize them with the PSP since there's better technology. I'm also not entirely sure how often we get the specifics on what each dev team member does in Final Fantasy games and stuff like that. So I think it's pretty cool to know that he specifically worked on the layout and shit of the Shinra Manor, and also the confrontation, of course, between Cloud and Sephiroth. For the sake of this video, I'm just going to call him Sato. I didn't work on the original Crisis Core, but I definitely played it when it came out. At the time, I vaguely remembered Zack as a character who only had a brief appearance in Final Fantasy VII, but I was so surprised at the emotional reaction I had to his story. And this is something that I 100% agree with. I literally bought a PSP back in the day just to play Crisis Core, and that was the only reason. I ended up buying a couple more games here and there, but it was literally just to play Crisis Core. And going into the game, I really had no attachment to Zack, right? He's a very minor character in the original FF7. And if you don't even get that optional cutscene that you can get in the Shinra Manor after Cloud learns the truth of his past or whatever, he has extremely minimal screen time, and you don't even really understand the connection and all the stuff that happened between Cloud and Zack, right? So going into the game, I just don't even really care a lot of ways. I'm just playing this because it's FF7. I want to see Cloud. I want to see Sephiroth or whoever might be in this prequel. That's the reason I got Crisis Core. But then I played the game all the way through and absolutely fell in love with the character of Zack, right? And he ends up being, by the end of my playthrough, my favorite Final Fantasy character of all time. And it's been that way since I completed Crisis Core for the first time. He trumped Cloud for me. Prior to Crisis Core, Cloud was probably my favorite Final Fantasy character of all time. But man, something about it, maybe just because of the voice acting, the modern technology, just something about Crisis Core hit me different than the original FF7. I don't know why. And there's very few games in my life, especially back then when I'm like a hardened teenager that doesn't give a shit about anything, that makes me feel emotions. And I absolutely cried at the end of Crisis Core. It's one of the first games I ever cried to. Is this and the ending for Final Fantasy X, the first time I completed that. Very few games have done that to me. And even to this day, I don't really get that emotional when it comes to video games. It just depends on what the stories are. RDR2 is one example. What was the most challenging thing about adding these new features? There were many challenges, but adjusting the visuals was one of the biggest. We originally considered porting the graphics unchanged, but there were a lot of things that we were concerned about when we first brought the original version onto a large screen. We ultimately decided that we wanted to create a similar impression to the graphics from Final Fantasy VII Remake. However, there were some things that didn't work well when we just swapped out the 3D models, so we spent many long days altering and adjusting things. So what Sato says there makes a lot of sense, right? The PSP was obviously a tiny little handheld device that you played video games on, and it didn't have that big of a screen. If you were to take games from that and put them on a modern television that are usually massive, people have big-ass TVs in their house. The smallest TV in my house is like 30 inches, right? It's probably not going to look that good. It already doesn't have the best graphics, at least in assets and stuff when you walk around the world. It probably looks even worse when you stretch it to a modern TV. So they almost kind of had to in a lot of ways, I assume, to actually have to like remaster it and make it work formats to modern TVs. Katase's reply is, the PSP used the same graphics technology as the PS2 generation, so there's a gap of 3 generations here. Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion has achieved a graphical quality close to Remake, which makes it feel like a new, fresher, and more exciting game to play. And I don't know when the last time was you guys might have hooked up a PS2 to a modern TV, or if you've ever even done that. It looks like shit. You know, I hooked up my PS2 just a couple years ago to play Dragon Quest VIII, and it looked absolutely awful. I literally picked up a CRT TV just so I could play the game, and it all looked like shit. So again, it makes sense for them to want to update the graphics. Sato further adds on, we also felt that the original Crisis Core battle system felt a bit difficult to play in some places, especially when compared to recent games that have action-based battles. We re-examined all the areas that people considered hard to play in the original and implemented various ideas to improve them. A long period of tweaking and polishing was needed here too to ensure that the game was more playable, but kept what made the original great. Thinking back on it, we really did some serious fine-tuning on the game. And this is obviously one of the most welcome improvements when it comes to Reunion, because generally speaking, the battle system for Crisis Core is one of the biggest complaints, maybe outside of Genesis, I guess. That being said, though, I've never really had a problem with it. Now, I've never got super in-depth with the combat system and tried to beat, like, Minerva's super boss and stuff like that, or beat all, like, the in-game hard, very hard missions and all that other shit. But just as a general playthrough, we play the story and stuff like that and do some side missions here and there. Like, I've never had that much of an issue with the battle system. But that's just me. But I'm also, of course, looking forward to an improved battle system. There's nothing wrong with that. Both Crisis Core and Tactics Ogre are true fan favorites that have an impact during development. Indeed, the project team knew that it was quite a popular title from the beginning of development. We saw how lots of fans would post about Crisis Core on the anniversary of its release date each year. There was a little pressure from that, but the whole team really threw themselves into the development, so we're eager to show the results to everyone now. It was genuinely thanks to all the kind words from the fans that we were able to work so hard on this new version. Incidentally, the way everyone called out Gangaga when we revealed the game made me feel really glad after all our efforts.
Me?
Gangaga. I always love hearing that dev teams are like aware of their communities to talk about their games, right? The fact that they were aware that everybody was still talking about Crisis Core every year during its release date is great. It shows that they kind of keep tabs on what we're talking about, and kind of maybe that's what maybe motivated them eventually to do this goddamn game. Finally, what would you like to say to any players picking up Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion? Crisis Core Reunion has been made so that players of the PSP original can enjoy a nostalgic, but also fresh and different experience. I would recommend giving it a try. Playing this game will also let you enjoy the original Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and the upcoming Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on a deeper level, too. New shit confirmed. Just kidding. Though that is still a possibility. That's what's so exciting about Reunion, okay? Because, like, we're getting this game finally after, like, 15 years on modern platforms. Like, super exciting. It's overhauled graphically and battle system and everything, right? But this, like, just this possibility of there being something new, regardless of what that is. And even if there's not, I'm perfectly fine with that. But the possibility within a month of this almost being like a DLC, if you think about it, for like Remake again, like another DLC before Rebirth, if there's new stuff. And even so, even if there's nothing new, it still works, still connects to Remake, it's still perfectly fine. But again, man, just that slight possibility. I think what the best thing they could do is just a post-credit scene or something, or a cutscene during the credits. Very similar to Episode Intermission, right? When you finish playing Episode Intermission the first time, you're not expecting anything, dude. And they gave us a massive fucking cutscene, a bunch of scenes of Cloud in the gang, and then obviously a follow-up to Zack. And I think that's like the best thing you could do, because you need to know that Zack is supposed to die, right? If you're a newer player. Plus, for the people that have never played Crisis Core, they need that gut punch of watching Zack's death scene, right? And then you get the revelation, if you've never played this shit before, that, oh, so that guy at the end of Remake is supposed to actually be dead. I think a lot of that is necessary, right, when it comes to kind of understanding what's happening with Remake. And then, obviously, we still don't 100% know what's going on with Zack. But I think it'd be great to, like, finish up Crisis Core and we're like, damn, nothing new. And then the credits roll a little bit, and then, boom, it cuts to, like, something. Whatever it is. I don't know if we're going to see Cloud and the boys and the girls, or if we're going to see, like, Zack more of Zach. That's kind of what I want. It's Zach's game, so give me some follow-up on Zach, please, dear God. Either way, I'm just so fucking excited to play this game, man. Just one more month. So, of course, I want to pass off to you guys really quickly before we wrap it up. Crisis Core Reunion, it's coming out 4 weeks. What platform are you buying this game on? I am 100% buying it on PS5. I want it next gen. I want it to look as beautiful as possible. And I am, of course, buying a physical copy because I want that shit in my collection. Anyways, dudes, that's the video. Subscribe to you guys, our new social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @DashingDavidYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like low gain or leave it like Cobain.